Greetings, Corpse Clubbers, and welcome back for a brand new episode of Corpse Club, the official podcast for DailyDead.com. My name is Heather Wixon, and as you know, if you've been following along over at Daily Dead, we have been celebrating Indie Horror Month over the last week or so. And so for this episode, I am thrilled to be joined by writer-director Max Werkmeister, whose film Danny the Vampire completely floored me when I got to see it a few years ago at the Salem Horror Film Festival. And now it's currently out. I believe are you on Amazon and Tubi? I watched it on Tubi, Max, so I'm curious.
Yeah, we're in the two places nobody else is. No, that's where they all go now, right?
Honestly, though, first of all, thank you for joining us. I'm so thrilled to get to speak with you finally about the film.
Thank you for having me.
Oh boy, we're going to have some fun because it's been one of those weeks. But honestly, you know, what's really great. And I think you being on Tubi is a really fantastic thing because honestly, Tubi is sort of coming into its own as this really fantastic place to find all sorts of genre movies from, you know, yesteryear and today. So I think that ends up sort of being a real positive, I think, in the long run.
Yeah, it looks like we're caught up in the algorithm a bit. I've watched it just to run it and check where they put the commercial breaks. You can suggest those things, but sometimes I don't always listen. So I was curious, and then it kept popping up as a suggestion just for me, even though I, don't need to revisit it for obvious reasons. But I was like, oh, okay, the system kind of works, and it keeps popping up with similar movies. And we have made basically nothing on it so far, but it's way more than I thought it'd be. So.
Well, let's hope that we can get you some more eyes on it because, you know, I will say, and I actually, it's funny, I just did a review for another vampire horror comedy that came out last week. But, you know, honestly, like anybody who sets out to do a horror comedy, like I'm already excited. Then when you put vampires into the mix, like I'm like already completely on board. And I think for me, that's what I really loved about this movie is that how well you were able to sort of dig into a lot of the tropes that we know from vampire movies, but do something different. But you also gave us characters that we really cared about and could laugh with and just have some fun. And I'm just curious, like, was there something that sort of sparked, you know, you creatively when you set out to make this movie? Was there like a certain impetus like that was like behind like, oh, I want to make a really fun sort of buddy movie about like this badass chick and a vampire?
The story came to me in a daydream while I was awake and actively thinking about a story I could tell, specifically about Danny, because she was a character in a student film that I made. And I just, in the years that followed, as I became elderly, I started thinking about what she could be up to. And it really excited me because I just love her as a character. And then I got the kind of wild notion of doing a first feature as basically a sequel to a student film nobody's seen, but I didn't tell anybody that because then I knew that I would lose a lot of trust from people. And I just started thinking about what she'd be up to and what she would be doing and what the next part of her life would be and how probably unhappy she'd be after whatever previous epiphany she had gotten from that short student film. And then one thing led to another thing where I started thinking about, okay, well, she would probably be hired to break out another monster, and because people would misinterpret her actions as not being one of internal empowerment, but something that was maybe some kind of other act of generosity or something like that, which is kind of analogous to how some people might view any kind of art or movies where, you know, you get one completely different thing out of it than the initial idea, and you can kind of process that and see what you got out of the thing. It's all about Danny becoming more introspective, I realized. And so I thought about, okay, well, what's the creature? It could be, I love werewolves. I love them. But if I'm going to make it, it's not really going to be feasible on no budget. So I was like, vampires, you just give them teeth. And I started thinking about that beyond just that practical reason. And I thought, well, that would actually be a lot more appropriate than any other monster because Danny is at a place in her life where she, in order for her to be happy, just in general, as a human being, she has to make other people unhappy. And she is in a position in life where she can do basically anything that she wants. And she's horribly unfulfilled by it because she just wants that internal selfish realization and fulfillment. And so a vampire is somebody who's also kind of in an arrested state of development. They have to make other people suffer literally to survive. And the idea of having those two go together on some kind of mission was appealing. And then the next step was, okay, what's the vampire like? And the first thing you think of is like the punk rock version of a vampire in a lot of media, especially like 80s onward. And I thought it's a little straightforward, and Danny's already kind of out there. What if he's basically a puppy dog? And then I thought, I've been writing some stuff where it basically boiled down to two different characters arguing in a car. And I didn't want to do that again, even though I basically did in this with Kane and Margaret. And I said, okay, well, what about they just never argue? Like, how do you have two main characters who literally never have conflict or even really disagree on anything beginning to end? And then it kind of grew from like, what does each person want? And then that trajectory of these two turning into four characters, what they all want and how they might cross over and rub up against each other or jive with one another is where the story came from, as opposed to like, I want to make a vampire comedy. So that's where it all just like grew from, a little bit organically.
That's awesome. And honestly, for me, because as somebody who watches like hundreds of movies every year, like you just want somebody to bring something new and different to the table. And I like that you sort of talked about how there is this sort of lack of conflict between, Danny and Remy. But honestly, like to me, that's what makes the movie even more endearing, because it turns into sort of this buddy movie of sorts where like they're just sort of like feeding off of each other's misdeeds in a way. And they're really like supportive. And I was just thinking about it, I was like, you just don't see that every day in horror movies. Like, honestly, like it's weird to come away from a horror movie where you actually sort of feel inspired in a way where you're like, you're watching these characters and they have dreams and they have goals and they have things that they want to achieve. And like, I was thinking about that. I'm like, God, we just don't get enough of like sort of positivity, I guess, in horror.
I hope not too inspired by their specific actions, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not particularly gonna like go out and, start killing people or anything like that.
Besmirch a priest, with sexual misconduct or anything. Yeah.
No. That's definitely not on my agenda. But I like, for example, like Remy, like I love the fact that like, he wants to build a vampire sanctuary, and I'm like, that's kind of cute. Like, that's really adorable to me. Like I'm just like, it makes me fall in love with that character even more. And I was curious, like when you were working through these things, was it just trying to find some different way into these, like, because we've seen vampires and we've seen all kinds of vampires, but like finding a different way into sort of this type of a character that we just haven't seen a million times before.
Yeah, well, I guess it just comes down to like that core idea of like what a character wants. And so, a lot of times vampires in media fucking love being vampires. And of course, you get to live all the time and just kind of not worry about a lot of normal things that people do aside from who you're going to murder to survive. And so it became like, well, I would be okay, probably like just sitting around doing nothing a lot of the time. And Remy probably would if he has that open mind and he's just kind of a little bit of like a slow-witted puppy dog person. So I just started wondering like, well, what could he want? He'd probably just want literal, tangible, practical things like getting a generator or something and getting a lot of blood that he doesn't have to drink too much of, so he doesn't have to hurt as many people or hunt anyone down or do his research on who deserves it. And then the sanctuary came up and I thought like, yeah, that's enough of like something that somebody want, because it's rooted in his character, which is that he's probably a little lonely because he loves meeting people and taking solace in all the little things in life in a way that Danny does not. And so the story could kind of go in one of two ways, which is like you have the kind of narcissist character who can do anything she wants and is unfulfilled by little things and just wants big sweeping emotions and epiphanies and fulfilling her own life story that she imagines. And you have a vampire who has been doing this already for a long time and loves all the little things. And the two directions are like the vampire could teach the narcissist to appreciate the little things, or the narcissist could teach the vampire to no, fuck all that. Do whatever you want. You've already been being nice to people. Let be self-fulfilled. This is you time now, and use all this very self-help language that sounds nice on its surface for nefarious reasons, which is more selfish for him and for her. And the second option felt a lot more true to those characters and a lot more funny to me. So
yeah, no, definitely. And I'm curious. So once you kind of got the script together, what was like essentially your next step? Because I know that there are a lot of like, aspiring filmmakers out there who have ideas and they want to go out and they do these things, but like, it's a daunting process for anybody working at any different level. And I'm just curious because, honestly, like, and I don't mean this as like, as a cut down to like any other like sort of indie horror movies out there, but like so many times when you're working at a certain budgetary levels, like generally people sort of stick to one location and they kind of keep everything indoors as much as they can to kind of make things quote unquote easier. But like, you've got a road movie going on here. You've got tons of different locations, a lot of cast, some, really great set pieces, and nothing really here feels constrained by the fact that, I know you're not working with millions of dollars to tell this story. So I'm just curious, like, how did that kind of all like, once you had that script, like, how did you move forward then?
Yeah, that was the next thing. So I've never really put anything together of a large scale, barely even a small scale. I don't like make a lot of shorts or anything. I like long form storytelling. So I just, I'm always like helping hands on people's sets, and I usually edit things for people. And with this, it was just making that list of all of those locations and figuring out like what feasibly could maybe, what can be reworked or anything. The only thing that I ended up actually reworking a bit was I was like, okay, I need them in an intimate setting to be having this conversation. Like, what about like it's a small world kind of ride? And I thought that's not going to happen. So it turned into an arcade booth. And basically what you see is the idea of like a small movie. The most complicated thing was just like any location that we have to go to is going to be easy compared to finding a church. So that was pretty much the like first priority. And I found one that could be shot at a ranch in the LA area. And then I was told like a few weeks before shooting, I think, that it would be not available for the entire summer because a nearby ranch had like burned down or something, and they needed somebody to do a safety inspection, but they wouldn't be able to until the end of summer. And that was bad. Until a good friend of mine, like somehow after all this research I had done, quickly pulled up, hey, there's a church over in Riverside County, like 2 hours away. I was like, what? How'd you find that? And then I went and I called them up and I visited, and Riverside County has like a film commission that they want people to come and shoot things there, and they own that area. And it was like a fraction of the cost because you could shoot all day until 4 p.m. for free as long as you have insurance. And so that became like, okay, well, that's okay. So the rest shouldn't be as bad. But then it still kind of was anyway, because you're in the middle of that, you're getting that kicked up, and then your producer, in this case, Karen Clancy, who also plays Margaret, are like hopping on phones and looking up places and calling up liquor stores for, hey, in 2 days, I'm shooting a film. No, sorry. Huh? What? And, a lot of that. And so you just make lists and you just go down the lists and you just see what you could potentially maybe afford. And that became a factor. It was just, I had a very low confidence in being able to actually like produce the thing. And I couldn't really find somebody to do that for the production. And my fears were perfectly valid because I was probably 50 to 60% prepared, which sounds okay on paper, but when you're actually in the thing, it's not very good. So having Karen, who plays Margaret, like I said, and is a director in their own right, and has produced many things for companies and stuff that we had previously worked at, started saying, well, I know this person who can maybe do this. And well, this role we have to recast because of this schedule. Oh, well, maybe I can get you some options. And then, well, I think if you're going to shoot this, maybe you could do this, this, and that. And then within like 3 days, it's like, okay, well, you're the producer now. And it became a much smoother process. So big shout outs to Karen, because I assume, maybe I'm exaggerating in my own head or something, I think if that wasn't a factor, that I had that extra big time support, we would probably have to like have shot the rest of it like another summer or something and split it up. Not like Eraserhead levels of 5-year production, but it would have been painful. And who even knows who would have been willing to come back at that point.
Yeah. Well, don't forget also, I think Evil Dead was like something like 3 to 5 years also too. So,
that's true. So that always made me feel better because I'd be on set and I'd be kind of being very self-deprecating about how strugglesome things could be. And I could see it like registering as a reality on a lot of people's faces. And then I would pipe up and be like, Slug, it's going a lot better than I thought it would though. And they would be aghast that I would sit there and be like, well, Evil Dead and well, Eraserhead, It doesn't really sound convincing though, when you're just hanging out with mostly strangers, telling them to trust you, dude.
Well, take that, Sam Raimi. You got your movie done in a year. So, so think about that next time you're feeling like you need a little confidence boost. You pulled off something Sam Raimi couldn't. So, so take that to the bank. Whenever you need a boost, just remember that. But
Won't go to the bank anytime soon, except for a loan.
I feel you there, believe me. But I wanted to talk, because you mentioned how sort of this character of Danny is, she's very self-serving in a lot of ways. Like she's out there basically just, kind of existing to meet her needs, but there is some layers to that as well that I think get revealed as the movie goes on. And I won't go into too many specifics because I don't want to ruin sort of some of the surprises that come up later in the film. But I want to say that I think Alexandra does a fantastic job with this character. And I think she brings just so much likability to this character. And where it's like, I could never be her, but I want to be her, if that makes sense. And I was curious, like, can you talk a little sort of like finding her for this role and giving her this character? Because I think honestly, like she, I mean, and we could talk about Henry too as Remy, but like, she just is one of the biggest reasons that I fell in love with this movie, because it really, you have to be willing to follow her and, engage with her, even when she's doing maybe some not so great things, and still want to keep rooting for her, if that makes sense.
Yes. So that's the perfect thing to talk about, because like I said, Danny started in a student film that I made in college in this New Jersey school called Fairleigh Dickinson. And Alex was a theater major there. And we had met, and we weren't really like friends. We just kind of would bump into each other and would like do shtick or bits, just like when making eye contact, or just make a face at one another and never have like an actual conversation. And it was like a very good chemistry purely on that level, that we at least could vibe in that way. And then I had this idea about a student film for about just a Jersey Devil on a college campus, and a character who would kind of lose it, starting to get more and more obsessed with getting rid of it for the purposes of companionship and friendship, because Danny's a fairly lonely character. And I had designed that story to be like a devolution, where she kind of starts off kind of cool and calm and then loses it by the end. And I was like, this is supposed to be like a 20-minute short, so she has to be much more proactive in making everything happen. And so I just went for broke and had her be who she is, loud and proud and lonely and aggressive, just very aggressive. And I was thinking of Alex playing the role like before I even asked her about it. And I would be writing or rewriting something and giving her all these lines and thinking like, is this like, can an actor track what the idea of the humor of this? And I'd be like, oh, well, it's Alex, it's going to be fine. And so years later, when deciding to do a feature about that same character, like it was never even like an idea of having anybody else. I never told her this because I didn't want her to think that she had leverage. I just wanted her. she was worried about recasting if she gave any grievances, I found out. And I was like, that's great. I'm glad I didn't tell you that I would have just not done the movie without you, because I had written the whole thing up and I just took whatever this character would be going through to the next level. And as I was developing it, I started to realize for sure, like, oh yeah, she's the villain, basically. There's a lot of gray characters and different perspectives going on, but if you have to pick a villain, it's basically her. She doesn't really have many moments of sympathy. She's basically like a rich, like mildly depressed, white 20-something who gets to do whatever they want and is bummed out because they just personally are like, doing all these exciting things, it's kind of boring, actually. And so I was like, people are probably going to be initially opposed to her, but if it's Alex, she's just going to naturally bring a certain energy and likability to it. So it'll be fine. And I sent her the script and I was all pumped about it. I was like, here's the entire thing. She already said she wanted to do this loose idea that I had told her about. And then I was shocked to run different coasts. So at like 3 a.m, I got an email from her being like, I had some thoughts. And basically she went on about how this character is so unlikable. Nobody is going to follow her. Like, no shot. Is she even the main character? Am I wrong? Maybe. Am I being, selfish about it? And it's just very dark. But I like the heart stuff. And I thought, like, okay, well, since it's a dark comedy, dark stuff staying. And I kind of explained, like, it's going to be fine because you're you, and her actions are engaging regardless of whether or not you like her. And I think you're just naturally going to bring that kind of energy and likability to the role, even when you're saying terrible things and losing the word for emotions and things like that. She, you know, put all of her trust in it and totally went for broke, and it paid off. I think the world is now better off for her doing that performance and bestowing that upon us, no matter how much she hates Danny.
No, I totally agree. And I'm just curious because her and Henry together are just their chemistry is so infectious. Did you give them like a lot of time to come together and sort of work out these beats that like end up like sort of playing up between like their characters, or was it just sort of something that just occurred naturally because they're both awesome?
It just occurred. Yeah, nope, did not meet until the first day of shooting, partly because Alex is on like another coast and I flew her out for it and everything. And Remy was like a really scary thing to cast because I had no idea who it could be. I didn't have anyone particularly in mind or anything. So I put out a casting call, and I had, once again, like Karen coming to the rescue and putting out some feelers and things on somebody. It's hard to cast somebody who just has to be like immediately likable, especially on a no budget project where you're like, hey, we're giving offensively low pay. You want to just come on board and do this thing and get covered in blood and do sex scenes for us? Trust us. So it was a scary prospect to put that out there and be receiving lots of auditions, just like self auditions I was receiving and looking at. And a lot of them, you know, were good performers, but they just weren't quite the exact type for the role. And there was one person where I thought like, well, this person is like funny and charismatic, but I can tell they're smart and he's supposed to be dumb. So I'm like, there's just like, I need like, and something else. And I had gotten a message from Henry of like, hey, I saw this thing that Karen had posted in this group that we're both a part of, even though we don't know each other. And he sent like a photo of himself and was like, I could read something. And I sent him some sides, and then I waited and I was holding off, and it was like really kind of, I had already sent it to him fairly late before we were going to start shooting. And then it was like a couple of days passed, and then it was even closer. And then he sent it over, and I got the video of him, and it's the tent scene where he introduces Danny to his tent. Mm-hmm. And it started off with just a close up of his face, and he just was looking around as if he was admiring his own tent. And I was like, amazing. Now just say some words. And then he said the first line, and I was like, that's totally him. And so we met twice beforehand. He like went over, and kind of funny enough, both him and Alex like sat down with me and went over every single one of their lines, like independently at different points. They just had like the same kinds of thoughts of like, what about the syntax of this? Can we adjust this? I'm not sure what this specifically means. Just give me some context for it or whatever. And we had gone through the entire thing. And then, yeah, they didn't meet until the first day of shooting, of which the material was the love, I call it the escalating thread of love montage, where they're on front of a green screen and they're just goofing off, and I'm just yelling at things for them to do and giving them props and stuff like that. And so it was another thing of just like trust. It's like, I trust that the Alex thing is going to pay dividends. I trust they're going to have good chemistry together. And yeah, I think so.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that you mentioned also his tent, because I think there's so many little touches that I really appreciate about this. And I think your production designer, and I just had their name pulled up, and of course I closed the page again.
Danica Carruthers.
Thank you. I went back to the other page that I had open, because I love that you get like this sense of these characters, even when they're not talking, like Danny and her car. Like her car has all these like little fun aspects that really give you a sense of like who she is, and she doesn't have to say a word. Like even in like as you open the movie, when she's like sort of in the back of the car and she's going through the map and stuff, and you kind of see the lights and the little flags and everything like that, like you get a sense of her from that. And then looking around Remy's tent, like it gives you such a feeling of like, wow, there's some real thought put into this. And again, I'm not trying to say that there's other movies that don't have thought, but like, can you talk about, working with Danica in terms of finding these really clever ways of giving us such a bigger sense of who these people are, and, without them, inherently having to like lay it all out for us, like via dialogue?
Sure. Yeah. When Danica is also across the coast, because I went to school with her as well, and she first like reached out after I sent the script and was asking about like colors and things, and we kind of color coded loosely Danny to like reds and a little bit of purple, and Remy to blues and a little bit of green, because he's more kind of cool, and she's the fire, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so when she had also flown over not long before we started shooting, her and I had gone to like a local thrift shop, and we started looking for a lot of things for each of them. For the car, and then the big thing for me was Remy's tent, indeed, because I think of him as like somebody who, like I said, indulges in little things, and so he likes trends. He uses like lingo from different eras, like multiple. He's kind of eclectic. I think he says like red and boss, and I toyed with groovy, but it seemed like a little much.
Gotcha.
And, yeah, and so his tent was like, okay, well, like lava lamp, like he should have like children's toys and things, and it sounded kind of weird, but it's like just things that he can futz with, because he'll have like a lot of fun time. So he can have like hippie-ish things, then he can also have like 50s looking things. He has like a mini fridge that looks like it's right from that era. If mini fridges like that were around, but yeah, so that was a big aspect of it, as well as whatever color coding we could imbue. It was a lot of just figuring out, like so much of it ended up hinging on locations that it was a factor of big, again, shout outs to somebody, big shout outs to Danica for working with so much on the fly, considering she basically was the entire art department. And I feel so horribly about how much she had to do, from basically like creating the big cross that falls over and setting up, like her and I were like first to set and last to leave set pretty much every day, because we would just be figuring out all of those specifics, and she'd be twisting cardboard around to create things and painting it and rearranging the church like in its 3 different states of chaos until it becomes what it looks like towards the end. And then me saying, well, I want it to like pyramid a little and in the composition and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm forever in her debt.
That's awesome. Well, I'm curious, was that sort of influence then felt in terms of the costuming as well? Because I noticed DANNI, does wear like a lot of purples. There's some yellow in there too, but it's all like sort of these very bright, sort of eye-catching colors. And then, Remy, you mentioned the blues and the greens, which I noticed that sort of pops up a lot in several of his wardrobe choices as well. So I'm just curious, was that something like, did you have somebody working costume, or was it just sort of like, hey, let's go find some cool stuff for these guys to wear?
Yeah, I just asked people to bring certain things, certain colors, and show me certain wardrobe options that they may have had, especially like since she was flying. And the dress I bought, it not, as she would suggest in the movie, cost a lot of money, but she liked it so much she kept it anyways. There was a little thrift store shopping when we found the shirt that says "I'm a tornado" on it. We were like, great. It's purple and everything. And
I love that shirt. I'm so glad you mentioned it, because that's a really badass shirt.
Yeah. And then she like ripped it apart and made it more like a worker shirt. And then we were like, is this graphic like copywritten or something? And we looked it up. We called up the shirt company, and they're like, this is a custom shirt service. So no, it's not copyrighted. Great. And I think Remy was the only person we like bought some stuff for. Some of that is Henry and his wardrobe, and like his shoes and boots and stuff. But we had gone to the thrift store and also found like, oh, here's a shirt that looks like it could have been from the 70s or something. And then it would just be a factor of like, they basically had access to this bag of wardrobe. And I would just on the day be like, they'd ask what shirt, and be like, the green button down for today. And sometimes I had to call it on the day if it was just like a quick shot, like, well, this services this scene because of this color palette and also this mood. So let's go with this one. It was kind of like that. It was a little bit, it was the best kind of free flowing, where it was like not a problem to be thinking of things on the fly. But yeah, it was mostly just bring options, and I'll select things, especially for like the church people coming in and all those members. I guess we did buy wardrobe for Lou so he could be Father Williams and everything. We had like multiple versions of the collar because we had just not the resources for it. So we had like a normal little one that we finally got. Before that, we had like white cloth wrapped around cardboard, and you totally can't tell. No,
you really can't. I mean, you can't.
Oh, I was being sarcastic.
I actually didn't. I didn't even see it, so it fooled me. So good job. I have to ask you, because you're talking about like your locations and stuff like that. Is the House of Odd like a real place? Because I want to go there. That place is awesome. Like, where is that?
The interior is more shout outs, Mystic Museum / Bearded Lady. It's in Burbank.
I can't
It's a
believe I've
shop.
never been there. I live like 10 minutes from there and I've never been there. So that was inside
Yeah.
there.
On Magnolia. Yeah, that's the interior for the initial entrance, of course. And then we do a big location switch. The exterior and then the like hallways is all on the same ranch that we had shot the church stuff. It was like a very big ranch area that we had done that. But yeah, the actual shop itself was like, we found that place and we thought perfect, and we went in and I asked about it just point blank, and they just pulled out a piece of paper like this happens every day and said like, here's the thing to fill out, here's what it costs. So yeah, it is visitable. We definitely didn't build that.
That is awesome. I feel like the worst like LA based horror fan because I haven't been there. And I live really close to it. And I drive by it like all the time. And I don't know why I haven't made time, but now I am inspired because I want to be inside that place like forever. But yeah, I just thought that was really cool. And like you mentioned sort of like the color coding and stuff. And I really love the sequence like when DANNI goes in and ends up breaking Remy out because you guys really like add such a fun, like vivid color palette to that whole sequence. And you've got like the blacklight thing going and stuff like that. Like how challenging was it to shoot all of that and get it to look as great as it does? Because shout out, I'm going to shout out to your cinematographer, Jamie, is it Ballesteros?
Yeah, I think Jaime Ballesteros.
Jaime, sorry.
I've been told how it's pronounced, but he doesn't correct anybody ever. So
he can
it's up for interpretation.
It's totally fine. But he did a fantastic job with that entire sequence. It's like really fun.
Yeah. The initial idea was I thought about the breakout. In the script, it was written as the lights go green, because a lot of times breakouts tend to have like harsh red lighting. And I thought, well, it's a positive thing for them. So I wanted to be like the green light they get on going out. And I was thinking about how everything would get kind of lost in the green. We probably wouldn't have time with all of the complicated blood and little things we were going to be putting together to execute that very efficiently. And I think I was just on my phone or something and saw somebody do blacklight body paint. And I think 2 weeks before we even rolled on it, I was like, we're doing blacklight instead. I'm going to order a bunch of blacklight paint. And I was told that would be totally fine. And it turned out like 2 other people, a PA named Cody and Jaime himself also just happened to have black lights or something that we could use. So, it was the most complicated stuff to shoot in regard to just like the little blood geyser out of the person's head, the just caking up Henry and all of the nasty gunk, and people lashing out at each other and trying to stab each other, as opposed to the lighting, which was kind of straightforward. We kind of just flooded the rooms and then would sculpt a little bit, but we were feeling pretty set on that stuff. Otherwise, the like blacklight structures made out of cardboard and everything was also complicated. There's some stuff that we cut just because it was like it just looked like what it was, a lot of cardboard. But so that was definitely the worst of it that we experienced with the shoot. We kind of broke it up into 2 segments, the overall shoot. The first week, very easy stuff. Next 2 weeks, more complicated stuff, like a lot of church people and the breakout was the big thing that we ended on. And then we had a week to kind of recalibrate, and then 3 or 4 weeks to wrap it up. And we ended on like the worst possible thing, which was the black light breakout stuff. It was just complicated and messy for a lot of reasons. It took us so long for those other aspects that really kind of weren't the lighting as much, and some odd crew stuff happened with last minute swap-ins, and it was a rough way to stop. And then when we came back and we had recalibrated and we were extra prepared, everybody was like, wow, it's so great. It's like night and day, and all this preparation really is paying off, and I'm really game for it. And the real truth is I kind of scheduled a lot of the easier stuff in the second half, but I'm glad that morale skyrocketed after we could take the time to breathe, lick our wounds, and then think about how not to get more.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm curious too, because, I noticed when I was like doing research and stuff for this chat, that, you also edited the movie, which my other half is an editor. So I'm always touting the work of editors because I feel like it just doesn't get appreciated enough. And I'm just curious for you, was it a good way for, I mean, I'm sure budget wise, it made a lot of sense, but I'm curious from your perspective as sort of the creative, steward of the story and everything like that, did it also sort of help you in terms of being able to shape the material and put it in its final state and really keep that kind of control, as you were, getting this finalized and getting it ready to go out and start doing the festival circuits and things like that?
Definitely. Yeah. I did like the majority of post-production stuff. I think there are a couple of VFX shots that I didn't. Some other people came in clutch for us on that. That's something that was a little more complicated. Like, somebody's face gets ripped off also. And we
Which
need
is
to
a great
composite
sequence.
stuff. Yeah. And a couple things here and there. And then there was a final sound mix that came in just last year from somebody else and such. But yeah, I had done most of the fix it in post kind of, or in general, I did most of the VFX stuff. And then I also did like the editing and the color grading and just like designing the sound without mixing it. And I don't know if I would do all of those things again, but I would definitely always edit something again. I was editing things like after we would shoot and testing them out and seeing if we needed something. There was one day where it's like, what should we get an insert of this? And I was like, oh, that's so like obvious. Like we don't need to like show this thing in close up. And we shot half the scene and then we went back to our Airbnb and I edited the scene and I was like, we need that insert actually. So let's go. Don't say no to easy coverage. But yeah, it was from the jump always the idea was to edit, not because of convenience, but because I just knew exactly how I had intended for it to play out. There are things written in the script as if, I think Karen said it sometimes feels like an editor wrote it with like certain like, oh, we're going to cut straight to this, like slam to title here or something like that. And I just, had a good idea of like what the vision of the thing would be. And was excited to be able to just have control over it. As people say, a lot of directors, I guess, and prefer post-production because they're control freaks. And in production, you're not in control a lot of the time for obvious reasons. And I think that's definitely true. I definitely want to get on the level at some point of Kurosawa editing a movie as it's in production and being basically done with it by the end. I want to get there one day. That's a small ambition, right? To be like one of the most renowned filmmakers of all time. But it was very helpful. And it was also very good for when we did have a rough day or something, because then I could show people like, look, this is what we did today. And this is what it's basically going to look like. And people would get excited again about it. And so it was also just like a useful tool for just general, the feeling of being on set and making something, and reminding everyone, including yourself, that this is actually going to, putting these things together is going to tell an actual story. This is awesome. And it was very convenient in general, especially working during the pandemic to stitch everything. I mean, it was basically done by the time that came along, but being able to not work remotely with an editor or something and give a bunch of timestamps and then they upload it to Vimeo and then I go, no, not that time code. And then I wait again or something like that, which I've been on the other end of and trying to deliver something for somebody else that way. It's like, I can just sit there and go, what would this look like if I just removed this entire scene and I condensed this and I tried to smooth it over, and I could just do it in like 5 minutes and say like, oh yeah, I can get rid of this, or, or I can't, or whatever. I know there's kind of a stigma against directors editing their own things, but I fundamentally disagree on that. I don't get too precious about a lot of things. I like to snip and explore and see how I can smooth things over in any way possible. And I can do it so quickly because it's me. So I can just sit here and do that. It's fun to do. It's like a comfy place to be in.
Yeah, no, definitely. And honestly, like, and I'll say this is like, my other half, like he's worked with directors who like literally don't care about the editing process. And that makes his job even harder because it's like, he doesn't even know if he's meeting like the expectations of who he's working with sometimes, where they're like, here's a bunch of footage, go have fun. And, just send it to me when you're done. And he's like, but don't you have any like ideas? And you're like, no, just do whatever. And he's like, okay. So I have to imagine that it's probably way more creative, fulfilling to be able to be so immersed in the process from the beginning to the very end like that, even though if, it is a lot of work too, on top of it.
Yeah, but the edit is kind of the cool down a little bit. I guess I have the opposite where I kind of want to push everything off. We basically wouldn't start shooting for like a little bit later in the day because I'm a night person and I like working at night more, and that kind of would set the tone on production. And I always wanted to crawl away from any kind of problems on that. And then when editing came out, I was just doing it like at night for fun, basically. And when I talk to a lot of people who make things, they're like full steam ahead on production. I'm so jelly, that they can get into that energy and mindset. And then it'll be like 3 months after production. And I'll go like, how's it going? And they'll go, oh, I haven't even touched the footage yet. Like, that's fairly common for me to hear. Like, I don't want to look at it for at least a few months and then I'll do it. I'm like, oh my God, I'd be so like not interested at all almost in doing it months after the fact. I'd be so nervous that it wouldn't be like hadn't come together. But
yeah, especially like, because you don't like, if you don't look at the footage and actually like engage with it, like how do you even know that you have everything that you need? And then that makes me even more, potential challenges, because it's like if you're 3 or 6 months removed from production and like, oh gosh, we need like these shots, like then you have to like start calling people up, hoping that they're like available and things like that, which to me just seems like you're creating a whole lot of potential headaches for yourself.
Yeah, but I guess who am I to like, determine other people's recovery period from the mental trauma of some of these productions?
That's true. I mean, everybody has
like, hey, if that makes
process.
you happy and you're not going to have a breakdown or whatever, then so be it. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do.
No, totally. But I have to ask, because, the first, you made a movie and that's an amazing feat in itself. And I'm just curious because like, you did face challenges and you had to sort of, kind of think on your feet a lot of times. Like, what were some of the sort of the lessons that you took away from your experiences working on this? Because like I said, there are, a lot of aspiring filmmakers out there who haven't gotten this far and, may not be, it feels like a daunting process, because you just see like so many times it's like, it comes down to like who and things like that. But you set out to make a movie and you did it and it's out there in the world. And I'm just curious, like, what do you, looking at that, like, what do you take away from this whole thing?
Yeah, there are kind of two things, I guess, that immediately come to mind. I mean, there's some just like practical things of just like, everybody already knows, like, get whatever coverage you can. But even when you think you have enough, like if somebody just says we can grab this real quick, it's worth grabbing at any given moment, just in case, or to repurpose something or whatever. But then there's other things that are kind of more broad. One that I think about a lot is maybe it's not something that registers right away because you'd think could be something more immediately practical based on the fact that it's low budget and it'll be like a production value centered thing. But something that I thought about a lot is communication. I'm not, I don't know. I tend to not be somebody people naturally listen to. So I try to think, oh, I'm going to be just, being myself on this, and people will kind of pick up on that and they'll be themselves and we'll meet in the middle and then we'll figure out everything along the way. But you have to be prepared to just not worry about like getting along or being like charming anybody. Like, because if you're just trying to sit there and charm somebody or meet somebody in the middle and they're not meeting in the middle, not because of selfishness, but because they're just not, vibing with that style of speech or whatever and direction, then it's like, just be as blunt and straightforward as possible. Because what will make them happy is getting the work actually done instead of deciphering whatever cryptic notion you have of discussing ideas with them. So I just wish that like right from the jump, as soon as I could see somebody wasn't understanding what I was saying or maybe getting like frustrated by how I would communicate something, I wish I just like immediately tried to decipher exactly what they needed and just given that point blank, even if it wasn't, encased in some kind of package of chortling delight or something that they would think is so fun and cool. It's just being very practical about it would have been a lot smoother of a thing. And then also along the way, if you do detect that somebody has any kind of frustration or anything like that, it's so much better to just like get them to just say whatever they're thinking in a non-confrontational way. But if they're, I don't know about this or that, then you can see it kind of boiling up, just be like, lay it on me. and then they'll say it, and then you just sit there and you listen, and that's kind of the dovetail into the other thing, which is listen. I once heard somebody say, listen to everyone and also listen to no one, which I choose to interpret as always be open-minded to everyone's ideas, which I am. And then, but at the same time, if you know something for sure, creative decision wise, nothing harmful or anything like that, of course, you could stick to your guns and say like, no, like I do want to do it this way, even if nobody else does makeup like this or whatever. Like, I don't care. I don't want the makeup, for example, or something like that. No one to plant your feet, because then you'll get bummed about something, but also don't just write anybody off. And that can kind of go hand in hand with the communication aspect of it, because in the first week, I just felt constant guilt along the production process, because it's like, yeah, we're giving people money and stuff, but like not much, so I just didn't want to upset people. And if people were kind of looking like, I don't know why this decision's being made creatively, again, nothing safety wise or anything, but I would kind of fold and be like, well, maybe, okay, we could try something like that. And then after the first week, I was kind of feeling bummed about those ideas escaping. This idea or aspect that maybe I was excited about, this piece of set design that I was stoked about, and then getting talked out of it or something. So it might sound weird to say, I learned that, to stick to your guns, when that's a problem for a lot of people, especially people who are making an independent thing that they're directing. They can be little, divas about it traditionally or stereotypically, I guess. But for if you're feeling that guilt complex, like something like someone like I do, it's worth keeping that in mind, and that you are expressing yourself just as they're expressing themselves in any creative way. And it's a conversation, like all art is. So that's something that came to mind. And then there's practical things like location is one. Like there are some locations that we just walked into, like the House of Odd set, and it was like the footage just automatically looked good. We didn't have to worry that much about the end product, whereas this other stuff we dressed up, and I'm not like watching it and I'm thinking about how much more amateur it comparatively looks to something we didn't prepare for because we just didn't nail our own location for whatever reason, which is all on me, no shade on anyone else. So that's something else that was worth keeping in mind along the way. But those are just some things that came to mind from the jump.
Gotcha. So I'm curious, I won't go too much into how everything plays out in Danny and the Vampire, but I know I would be interested in seeing where Danny goes from here. And I'm just curious, like, what comes next for you? Have you thought about like revisiting this character and doing something else with her? Have you thought about like just going in a completely different direction? I'm just curious, now that, Danny's out in the world now, it's for everybody to enjoy, like what comes next for you?
I don't know like when we'd ever be able to do it, but I have like 20 pages and a full outline of another Danny movie that I'm very excited about, that anybody who is like tickled and charmed and endeared by Danny and the Vampire will probably be unhappy with, because it's a very dark and kind of aggressive movie, and to reflect where Danny is at that point in her life, which is not thinking that she's quirky or anything, but just deeply lonely and traveling with her half vampire offspring, who she still doesn't totally jive with. So that's something that I would like to do at some point, if I can ever, properly fund it or whatever. But something that can feasibly be done and is being worked on is right now, just basically for fun. I'm putting together, in the process of recording people and getting nice, fun work in from people for an audio project that I'm going to release later this year. That's a 5-part mini series that'll be on, wherever podcasts are heard. That's a story about a pompous detective and a slow-witted vampire trying to solve a mysterious murder the week of the stock market crash, which is also leading into Halloween. And the vampire is Remy. So it's going to be
that is spin-off. Amazing. Holy crap. That excites me also, just because like I'm somebody who grew up like in a family that really appreciated like radio serials, like, and then like I remember like in junior high we would listen to the Shadow episodes and things like that. So when people like kind of make fun of podcasts and things like that, I'm like, honestly, for me, like when people can bring stories into that, like, channel of communication, like I get excited because it just takes me back to like how people used to appreciate stories just by listening to them. Like I love visuals and I love movies and stuff like that, but I think there's something to be said about being able to kind of do it, from an audio perspective. So that is really cool. Is that like in the next few months or?
Intending on getting it out for fall for Halloween, basically.
Awesome.
Something I would have liked to do for DANNI, but here's like a second chance at doing something like that. Yeah, it's all written up. I'm already receiving some recordings from some great people who are hopping aboard. It's all kind of like a volunteer project. We're not like killing ourselves over any of that and budgets and wardrobe and location and budgets and props and budgets or anything like that. So we're just telling the story straight up in this audio format. And it's also kind of amazing just from a practicality standpoint, coming off of a feature where it's like, oh, I took this line that somebody recorded for me and I just like put them in this setting where there's a little bit of reverberation and some exterior ambience and a little bit of crowd reaction, just laid these sound effects down in maybe 10 minutes. And I was like, it's done. Look at that. Oh my God, this is amazing. Going straight from like writing to basically post-production is a delightful thing. So I think it'll be fun. It's this fun story that's different tonally from Danny the Vampire, but it's about, emotional intelligence and has this mysterious angle to it. But I keep saying it's kind of like Sleepy Hollow meets The Nice Guys, but with like an emotional or undercurrent to it that's permeating a lot more.
Well, I am in. You're going to have to keep me posted on that because I want to check that out just for myself. But I'm glad we can at least share that with our listeners too, so that way they can keep an ear out for it as well. I was going to say but that doesn't quite make sense. So I'll go with the dad joke there.
Yeah, we'll edit that. We'll edit. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, Max, I have to ask, as we sort of wrap this up, it has to feel, somewhat great to know that like you made something and you set out to make something, you achieved that, you got it out into the world, because I can tell you there's a lot of filmmakers who don't make it that far. And I'm just curious, like, how grateful are you to being able, like, I know we joked a little bit, like, everything sort of feeling like it's on, Prime in Tubi, but I have to wonder, like, it still has to feel pretty darn good that like it's out there. Like this is a thing that you made, people can enjoy it from all over the world, basically. And, this story gets to live on with, horror fans, for as long as, these platforms exist and things like that. Even if like you had a lot of, challenges and things that sort of came up throughout production.
It does. I feel very grateful, especially to everybody who got involved and did, I joked about how people, it's hard to get people to trust you on it, but they did. Like it's just amazing that everybody pitched in and got more and more invested and so many of the people involved and all these different roles showed up, whether cast or crew, to the premiere that we got to have in the Chinese theater, no less, and last fall as part of Dances with Films film festival. And that was kind of like the nice capper to the festival journey we had done. And I say, since, it basically debuted in 2020 and it's been touched up a little bit after that, I'm pretty much sick of the movie itself, the visuals and the sounds and everything, but I'm never sick of the characters and the story and everything. So getting to put it out is a relief at the very least. And it does feel good that it's something that I'm actually happy about. It's not because, it's one thing to put something out, but it's another thing to be like, oh, I got to express myself and put this out in the world. And yeah, like you said, it does feel good on that level. If I was horribly disappointed with the product, maybe I still wouldn't think that counts for anything but participation, but I do. And I'm happy. I did check it and test it on Tubi and see the little TV MA come up and go, cool. It's like the TV. So yeah, it is pretty wonderful. And I thanks so much for supporting it and not just this way, but also like reviewing it, making a Rotten Tomatoes page for it, just like a real movie.
Yeah.
Another aspect. You definitely had, I've said before, the reception to things that you put out. There's kind of like, there's like a worst version in terms of how you like feel and react to it. And it's kind of a best version in terms of how you feel and react. And like the best kind of reaction or feeling you can get from something, from some kind of review or whatever, comment on the thing that you made, is somebody who recognizes all of the pros and cons that you do and say, yeah, there are these pros and there are these cons, but the pros were so high, I hardly even cared about the cons. It was still a good time. And that's like, oh, great. And that's kind of what your review was. And then the worst kind is they recognize all the same pros and cons and they say, yeah, there's the pros and there's the cons, but the pros were so low and the cons were so high, I just couldn't even enjoy the pros. And you go, oh no. And it's kind of like one version is, oh, they see me. And the other one is like, oh no, they see me. And I was very happy to get that kind of reaction and feedback. Thank you.
Oh no. And honestly, to me, look, filmmaking is hard regardless of whatever budget level you're working at. But also, I just feel like people are so demanding of perfection. When I think about like some of my very favorite movies, none of them are perfect in any way, shape, or form. So if you go into a movie expecting perfection, you're always going to be let down. I think that's a lot of things that come up these days, where I watch so much like gut reaction to movies where everyone's like, oh, that sucked. And I'm like, but did it really? Or are you just sort of having like a knee-jerk reaction, and in 5 years, you're going to be like, oh, I was so wrong. Because I see that all the time. Or I see people who like, they'll just overlook a movie because they get a certain vibe from it. And then they're like, oh, that was amazing. And I'm like, yeah, there was so many of us talking about it. So yeah, like honestly, like for me, any movie that sets out, regardless, again, of its resources and things like that, to do something different, to, dare to tell its own type of story, in a way that I haven't seen a million times before, I'm already a fan. And then when you can give me characters that I really care about and like really push boundaries, especially when, knowing, what you guys are working with, like I'm a fan. Like to me, that's all I need. Like I just, maybe that's an oversimplified way of looking at like criticism, but like to me, like, if I can tell somebody's genuinely putting their best foot forward in a movie, and you can feel the love coming through in the final product, like I'm never going to be somebody who's going to try to cut that down, because that to me, like, that's what filmmaking should be. Like we should be encouraging people who are putting themselves out there, because it's so easy to sit here and criticize when you're not the one out there doing it. So I don't know, that's my rant. But like, for me, like, I sit there and I look at like something like Silver Bullet. I love that movie with every fiber of my being. Does it have some of the worst werewolves I've ever seen in an 80s horror movie? Yes. Not as bad as Howling 2, which is another movie that I love. But like, it doesn't make me love those movies any less, And I think, again, I don't know if it's social media or whatever it is these days, but I just see so many people cutting down movies without really examining the why behind it. And it really bums me out. And I wish people would be a little more receptive. And that's why I do things like going and watching like a lot of the movies that most people would sort of skip at film festivals, because they're not the higher, they don't have like the quote unquote star power and things like that. Like I'll watch everything that I possibly can, because we should be talking about all of these movies at every level. So anyway, I'll stop rambling.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but our next project is going to be perfect. So
okay. Well, that's even better. Then I'm going to be even more impressed the next time. So,
but I agree. I think of art as an expression, even if that expression involves a man eating a used tampon, and it's something that I like to see people expressing themselves through a creative outlet. No matter, like you said, any resources or challenges that come up, in a way can make it more engaging, even in some purposes. That's not to excuse whatever I'm saying about my own thing. I'm just speaking broadly. That's
yes. Although admittedly,
trust me, there are plenty of things I'm not stoked about.
Yeah. Although admittedly, I will say It Stains the Sands Red. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that actually had a really interesting use of a tampon with a zombie that I'd never seen before. And again, I was a big fan of that movie because it just gave me something different out of a zombie movie. So
that sounds engaging. Yeah, send me your Letterboxd list of tampon movies, and I'll definitely check each one out. I knew that somebody must have done the vampire eating like a tampon. I just deliberately, I usually look things up to make sure it hasn't been done. I was like, I know somebody's done this, and I just can't look it up because I'll be so sad. It's so important to emotionally establish this for their relationship. I really cared so much about it.
Well, I've only seen zombies, so I think you're still in the clear there.
Very good.
Excellent. But Max, thank you so much for joining us today. And just real quick, so folks can follow along with you and your projects and stuff like that, where can they find you on social media?
Sure. I don't have personal social media, but I have for the movie on Twitter at Danny Movie. That's Danny DANNI, as the title would suggest. On Instagram, it's just Danny and the Vampire. And then I have another Twitter that I occasionally utilize called I think it's at Ugly Cupcake ENT for Ugly Cupcake Entertainment. And yeah, that's where you can find some things.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for doing this. And again, congratulations on the film. I'm so glad that, it's out there for people to enjoy. And if you're listening and, you're looking for, some vampire movie with a little bit of a different kind of bite to it. Again, I'll throw my dad joke in there one more time.
It's just not about vampires, basically. If you like a vampire movie that starts as a monster movie, then turns into like Eastbound and Down for an hour, and then turns back into a vampire monster movie, then
that's actually a genius. I'm like, I never even made the Eastbound and Down reference, but now I totally did.
Because you would never associate the two, really, But it's kind of watching it what I think of.
I could see that though. But yeah, like for those of you listening, like right now, you can stream Danny and the Vampire over on Amazon Prime. You can find it on Tubi. It looks wonderful on Tubi. And I actually like Tubi because I do think their commercial breaks are a lot easier to stomach than some of the other streaming platforms out there. So
yeah, they use most of my suggestions, so which was nice.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it was broken up really well because I've seen a few where I'm just like on different platforms where I was like, really? We're doing this now? Okay. Looking at you, Roku.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this has like the movie has like cuts to black and fade outs and stuff. So it's like wonderful. They just put them right there.
It feels like when like you were a kid and you were watching, horror movies on TV and like for their actual like real TV debuts. So I appreciate that.
Uncensored.
Yeah. But again, thanks so much for coming on, Max. And for those of you listening, thanks so much for checking out this latest episode of Corpse Club. And of course, as I mentioned, we are celebrating Indie Horror Month over at Daily Dead throughout the month of April. So please be sure to check us out every day for more reviews and interviews and fun features that we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. And of course, we'll be back next week for more Indie Horror Month goodness here on Corpse Club. You can find out more details on us over at corpseclub.com and of course, dailydead.com. And our Twitter is, of course, Daily Dead News. So you can follow us over there on social. I feel like I've just handled a whole lot of business, but we do appreciate you guys all listening. And until next time, everybody, stay scary.